This CEO hated children since his 7-year-old sister disappeared. But when a dying little girl in the hospital revealed she was his abandoned daughter, the past returned. Would you face a child you abandoned knowing she's dying? The 42nd floor of the Whitfield Tower had always been Marcus's kingdom. From his corner office, he could see the entire city sprawling beneath him like a chessboard where he moved the pieces. At 45, Marcus Whitfield commanded an empire worth billions, his steel-gray eyes as cold as the December wind, rattling the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Sir, the quarterly reports," his assistant Vivian Sterling announced, placing a thick folder on his mahogany desk. Her voice carried the same tension that had been suffocating the office for weeks. Marcus didn't look up from his computer screen, where red numbers painted a devastating picture. Whitfield Industries, the company his grandfather built from nothing, was hemorrhaging money at an unprecedented rate. 3 major contracts lost, 2 key investors pulling out, and now bankruptcy loomed like a shadow over everything he'd worked for. "Get me the board on the line," he barked, loosening his silk tie. The pressure in his chest felt like someone was sitting on his ribcage, but Marcus Whitfield didn't show weakness. He never had, not since that terrible day 33 years ago, when his 7-year-old sister Sophia vanished without a trace, leaving him at 12 years old to witness his parents' complete emotional collapse. That tragedy had forged him into a man who trusted no one completely, loved no one deeply, and especially avoided children at all costs. Their innocent laughter reminded him too much of Sophia's giggles, echoing through empty hallways. The phone rang. Bad news. Another investor backing out. Then another call. Worse news. The bank was calling in their loans. Marcus's breathing became shallow, rapid. The numbers on the screen began to blur as his vision tunneled. The weight on his chest intensified, like an invisible hand squeezing his heart in a vice grip. "Sir, Mr. Whitfield?" Vivian's voice seemed to come from underwater. The last thing Marcus saw before everything went black was a strange flash of memory. A woman with warm brown hair and kind eyes, reaching toward him with a gentle smile he couldn't quite place. Who was she? Why couldn't he remember her name? The sound of his body hitting the marble floor echoed through the executive suite like a gunshot. In the ambulance racing through downtown traffic, paramedics worked frantically over Marcus's unconscious form. His vital signs were erratic, his face pale as winter snow. But even unconscious, he kept whispering a name no one could quite make out. Elena. At Metropolitan General Hospital, Dr. Sarah Chun emerged from the emergency room with grim news for the small group of Whitfield Industries executives who had gathered. "He's stable, but barely," she announced, removing her surgical gloves. The stress nearly killed him. His heart couldn't handle whatever pressure he was under. He's going to need complete rest and absolutely no business stress if he wants to survive. As Marcus lay unconscious in the cardiac wing, connected to monitors and IVs, his empire crumbled in real time. Stock prices plummeted. Competitors circled like vultures. The Whitfield name, once synonymous with power and success, was becoming a cautionary tale told in boardrooms across the country. But somewhere in the sterile corridors of that same hospital, a 8-year-old girl with fiery red hair and eyes as blue as summer sky was about to change everything. Marcus thought he knew about his own life. The collision of their worlds was just hours away, and nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days in the cardiac wing had done nothing to soften Marcus Whitfield's edges. The steady beeping of heart monitors and the sterile smell of disinfectant only amplified his irritation. He hated hospitals almost as much as he hated the weakness that had landed him in one. "Mr. Whitfield, you need to stay in bed," Nurse Patricia insisted for the 4th time that morning, adjusting his foredrip. "Doctor's orders." Marcus glared at her with those steel-gray eyes that had intimidated countless business rivals. I don't take orders from anyone. But even his legendary stubbornness couldn't fight the exhaustion weighing down his limbs. The doctors had been clear. The stress-induced heart attack had nearly killed him. His body was forcing him to slow down. Whether he liked it or not, that it was just after lunch when he heard it. A sound that made his blood run cold. Children's laughter, high-pitched, innocent giggles echoing from somewhere down the hallway. Marcus's jaw clenched as memories of Sophia threatened to surface. He'd specifically requested a private wing to avoid this exact situation. Then he heard something worse, a little girl singing softly to herself. "That's it," Marcus muttered, ripping off his heart monitor leads. The machine immediately began beeping frantically as he swung his legs over the side of the bed. Against every medical recommendation, he stormed into the hallway wearing nothing but his hospital gown and fury. What he saw stopped him dead in his tracks. Sitting cross-legged on the polished linoleum floor was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Her hair was the most vibrant red he'd ever seen, cascading in wild curls down her back. Freckles danced across her nose like scattered stardust. She wore a cherry red dress decorated with tiny yellow flowers, though it was clearly well worn and carefully mended in several places. She was playing with paper dolls, creating elaborate stories with voices and sound effects that filled the empty corridor with life. And then the princess said to the dragon, "You can't scare me because my daddy is the bravest man in the whole wide world," she whispered to her makeshift toys. Marcus should have turned around, should have gone back to his room, should have called a nurse to remove this child from his sight. Instead, something rooted him to the spot. The little girl looked up, and Marcus found himself staring into eyes so blue they reminded him of Elena's in that strange memory he couldn't quite grasp. But that was impossible. He didn't know any Elena. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then the most extraordinary thing happened. The little girl's face exploded into pure joy. Her paper dolls scattered as she scrambled to her feet and ran straight toward him. "Daddy, Daddy, you came. You finally came to see me." Before Marcus could react, small arms wrapped around his waist with a fierce love that nearly knocked him over. The child pressed her face against his stomach, holding him like she'd been waiting her entire life for this moment. "I'm not your father," Marcus said harshly, trying to pry her arms away. "I don't have children. I don't want children." But the little girl just looked up at him with those impossibly blue eyes, tears beginning to gather. "Yes, you are," she insisted, her voice trembling but certain. "You're Marcus Whitfield. Mommy showed me your picture 1,000,000 times. She said you were just busy building your big company, but that you'd come back to us someday. She said you loved me, even though you couldn't be here." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "What's your name?" "Lily Campbell," she said proudly. "I'm 8 years old, and I've been waiting for you my whole life." Before Marcus could process this bombshell, Nurse Patricia appeared with 2 other staff members. "Lily, sweetheart, you can't be bothering the other patients," Patricia said gently, though her eyes were filled with sadness. "He's not a patient. He's my daddy." Lily protested. The nurse's expression grew even more pained. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm so sorry. Lily has acute leukemia. She's been here for treatments, and sometimes the medication makes her confused about things." Marcus stared at the child, this impossible little girl who claimed to be his daughter. A child with cancer. A child who might be dying. And in that moment, everything he thought he knew about his own life began to crumble. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's face, those sapphire blue eyes filled with such pure love and devastating hope. The way she'd said, "Daddy," with such certainty, as if she'd been practicing the word her entire life. He stared at a ceiling, his mind racing. Elena Campbell. The name felt familiar on his tongue, like a song he'd once known, but couldn't quite remember the melody. How could he have forgotten someone important enough to be named as the mother of his alleged child? Around 3 a.m, the first flash hit him. A woman's laugh. Rich, warm, infectious. The kind of laugh that made you want to join in, even if you didn't know the joke. Marcus sat up in bed, his heart racing for entirely different reasons than his medical condition. Then another fragment. Hands. Delicate fingers intertwined with his larger ones. The sensation was so real, he looked down at his own hands, half expecting to see hers there. A small cafe with checkered tablecloths. Steam rising from 2 coffee cups. A woman with chestnut brown hair tucked behind her ear, leaning forward as she listened to him talk. But what had they been discussing? Why couldn't he remember the conversation? Only the feeling of being completely understood? Marcus pressed his palms against his temples as a headache began building. The harder he tried to remember, the more the memories seemed to slip away like smoke. Around dawn, exhaustion finally claimed him, but his dreams were even more disturbing. The dream, he was standing in a small apartment filled with warm sunlight. A woman's voice called from another room, and his dream self felt his heart lift with joy. Marcus, come feel this. He walked toward the voice, and there she was, Elena, pregnant, glowing, her hands resting on her rounded belly. She was wearing a soft yellow sundress, and when she smiled at him, it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Feel what? Dream Marcus asked, moving closer. The baby's kicking. I think she knows her daddy's voice. In the dream, Marcus placed his hands on Elena's belly and felt tiny movements beneath his palms. Life, his child. He remembered feeling overwhelmed with love so fierce it took his breath away. She? He whispered. I know it's too early to tell. But I have a feeling, Elena said, covering his hands with hers. What should we name her? Lily, he heard himself say. Like the flowers you love so much. Marcus woke with a gasp, his hospital gown soaked in sweat. A dream had felt more real than reality, but that was impossible. He'd never been in love. He'd never wanted children. Good morning, Mr. Whitfield. Vivian Sterling's crisp voice cut through his confusion. His longtime assistant stood in the doorway, briefcase in hand, looking every inch the efficient professional she'd always been. Marcus studied her face carefully. Vivian had worked for him for 8 years. If anyone would remember a significant relationship in his life, it would be her. Vivian, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. She set down her briefcase, her expression guarded. Of course, sir. Do you remember me being involved with a woman named Elena Campbell? About 9 years ago? For just a split second, Marcus caught something in Vivian's eyes, a flicker of recognition, quickly suppressed. But she'd been his assistant too. Long for him to miss it. Elena Campbell? Vivian repeated slowly, as if testing the name. No, sir. I don't recall anyone by that name. You've always been very focused on your work. But Marcus noticed the slight tremor in her voice, the way. She couldn't quite meet his eyes. Vivian Sterling had many talents, but lying convincingly wasn't one of them. Are you certain? He pressed. Think carefully, Vivian. This is important. I'm positive, Mr. Whitfield. But her hand shook slightly as she reached for her briefcase. Perhaps the stress of your illness is causing some confusion. Marcus leaned back against his pillows, studying his assistant's nervous demeanor. After 8 years of working together, he knew all her tells. The way she touched her earring when uncomfortable, how she spoke faster when she was hiding something. All the signs were there. Vivian, he said quietly, what aren't you telling me? Marcus discharged himself from the hospital against medical advice the next morning. His doctors protested, warning about the risks to his heart, but Marcus Whitfield had never let anyone else control his destiny. He had questions that needed Answers, and he wouldn't find them lying in a hospital bed by noon. He was sitting across from Samuel Cross in the detective's downtown office. Samuel is known as the best private investigator money could buy. Discreet, thorough, and completely without scruples when it came to digging up buried secrets. "I need you to investigate my own life," Marcus said bluntly, sliding a check across the mahogany desk. Specifically, a 4-month period 9 years ago. From March to July 2016, Samuel raised an eyebrow but didn't comment on the unusual request. In his line of work, he'd seen stranger things. "What exactly are we looking for?" "A woman named Elena Campbell, an 8-year-old girl who claims to be my daughter." "And why I can't remember either of them?" Marcus leaned forward, his steel gray eyes intense. "Start with medical records, employment history, anything you can find about that time period in my life." "Any particular reason you're focusing on those months?" Marcus hesitated, then pulled out his phone, showing Samuel a photo he'd discreetly taken of Lily during his hospital stay. "This child has my eyes. She knew details about my life that she shouldn't know. And when I try to remember that time, period, it's like staring into a black hole." Samuel studied the photo, then Marcus's face. After 30 years as a detective, he'd developed an instinct for when someone was telling the truth. "I'll start with public records and work from there. Give me 48 hours. But it didn't take 48 hours. Samuel called that same evening, his voice tense with discovery. "Marcus, you need to see this. Can you come to my office?" An hour later, Marcus sat staring at a timeline Samuel had constructed on a whiteboard. Red pins marked significant dates, with photos and documents scattered across the surface. "Here's what I found," Samuel began, pointing to the board. "March through July 2016. Officially, according to your family's records, you were in Europe on an extended therapeutic retreat following a nervous breakdown." "I've never had a nervous breakdown." "That's what's interesting. I checked with every luxury retreat center, clinic, and hotel in Europe. No record of Marcus Whitfield anywhere. No passport stamps, no credit card transactions, no flight records. For 4 months, you didn't exist." Marcus felt his blood chill. "That's impossible. But here's where it gets stranger." Samuel pointed to a hospital record. "Elena Campbell gave birth at Metropolitan General Hospital 9 years ago. Father's name on the birth certificate, Marcus Whitfield." The room spun around Marcus. "Show me." Samuel handed him a copy of the birth certificate. There it was, in black and white. Lily Elena Campbell, born July 15, 2016. Father, Marcus Whitfield. Mother, Alana Marie Campbell. "The signature matches yours," Samuel continued. "I had it verified by a handwriting expert. You were there, Marcus. You signed that birth certificate." Marcus stared at the document, his hands trembling. "But I don't remember any of this. There's more." Samuel pulled out another document. "Medical records show you were admitted to Clearwater Private Psychiatric Facility 3 times during July 2016. The admitting physician was Dr. Heinrich Vaughn, a specialist in experimental neurological treatments." "Experimental treatments? Memory modification therapy. It's controversial, borderline illegal, but extremely effective for trauma patients." Or, Samuel paused meaningfully, "for removing unwanted memories entirely." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "You're saying someone deliberately erased my memories?" "I'm saying someone went to extraordinary lengths to make you forget 4 months of your life. The question is, who had the power and motivation to do something like this?" Marcus thought about his family's reaction when he'd mentioned Elena's name. His mother's cold dismissal, Jonathan's nervous laughter, Vivian's obvious lies. "My family," he said quietly. "They did this to me." Samuel nodded grimly. "The treatment at Clearwater was paid for, by the Whitfield Family Trust. Your own family. Had your memories erased, Marcus? The question is, what were you planning to do that scared them enough to take such drastic action? Armed with Elena's last known address from the hospital records, Marcus drove through the winding streets of Oak Valley the next morning. His heart pounded as he pulled up to a modest apartment complex with faded brick walls and overgrown gardens. This was where his alleged daughter had lived for the first 7 years of her life. Building 4, Apartment 2B. Marcus stood before the weathered door, his hand frozen inches from the knocker. What if no one remembered Elena? What if this was all an elaborate delusion brought on by his heart attack? Before he could second-guess himself further, a door creaked open across the hallway. "Excuse me, young man, can I help you?" An elderly Hispanic woman peered at him with curious brown eyes. She wore a colorful floral housecoat and held a steaming cup of coffee. "I'm looking for information about Elena Campbell," Marcus said, pulling out the photos Samuel had found in the hospital records. "She used to live in 2 Bites." The woman's face immediately transformed, her eyes widening with recognition and something that looked like joy. "Dios mío, you're him." She set down her coffee cup and stepped closer, studying Marcus's face intently. "You're Marcus. Elena showed me your picture so many times. She said you would come looking for her someday." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "You knew Elena? Knew her?" "I love that girl like my own daughter." The woman extended her hand. "I'm Carmen Rodriguez. Elena and little Lily lived right across the hall from me for 6 years. Please, come in, come in." Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment was warm and inviting, filled with family photos and the scent of fresh coffee. She gestured for Marcus to sit on her worn sofa while she settled into a rocking chair across from him. "Elena talked about you every single day," she began, her eyes misty with memory. "She kept a shoebox full of newspaper clippings about your business. She would show them to Lily and say, 'Myra, mi amor, that's your papa. He's working very hard, but someday he'll come home to us.'" Marcus's throat tightened. What happened? To her? Where did she go? Carmen's expression darkened. 7 months ago, Elena became very sad, very sick. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. She kept saying people were watching her, following her. Then one day, men in suits came and took her away. They said she needed help, that she was having a breakdown. What men? Did you see them? Expensive suits, fancy car. They had papers, official documents. They said Elena was dangerous to herself and to Lily. Carmen dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I tried to keep Lily here with me, but they said she had to go to the hospital for tests. That's when we found out about the cancer. Marcus felt sick. Elena never came back? Never. I went to the hospital where they took her. But they said no Elena Campbell was there. Like she just disappeared. Carmen leaned forward. But you're here now. You can find her, yes? You can bring her home to Lily? Marcus nodded, though his mind was reeling. Men in suits. Official papers. His family's influence reached far and wide. They had connections everywhere. Mrs. Rodriguez, did Elena ever mention why she and I weren't together? Why I hadn't been in Lily's life? Carmen's expression grew fierce. She said your family was very powerful, very cruel. They threatened to destroy her career if she ever contacted you. She said they told her you never wanted children, that you would hate her if you knew about the baby. That's not true, Marcus. Said quietly, I know, Mio. I could see it in Elena's eyes when she talked about you. That woman loved you with her whole heart, and she believed until the very end that you loved her too, somewhere deep down, even if you couldn't remember. As Marcus sat in Carmen's living room, surrounded by the echoes of a life he'd been forced to forget, one thing became crystal clear. His family hadn't just stolen his memories. They'd destroyed the only real love he'd ever known and condemned an innocent woman and child to years of suffering. But now he knew the truth. And Marcus Whitfield had never backed down from a fight in his life. The Whitfield family estate loomed before Marcus like a fortress of dark secrets. He hadn't set foot in his childhood home for over a year, preferring the anonymity of his downtown penthouse. But tonight, armed with the truth Carmen had revealed, he was ready for war. The grand foyer echoed with his footsteps as he strode through familiar halls lined with portraits of dead Whitfields, each one watching him with cold, disapproving eyes. He found them in the oak-paneled study where family business had been conducted for 3 generations. His father Richard, his mother Catherine, and his older brother Jonathan. They looked up from their brandy and financial documents as he entered, their expressions ranging from surprise to guilt. "Marcus," his mother said coolly, setting down her crystal glass, "you should be resting." The doctors said a lot of things," Marcus interrupted, his voice deadly calm. "But they didn't mention memory modification therapy, or Dr. Heinrich Vaughn, or the 4 months you stole from my life." The silence that followed was deafening. Jonathan's face went pale, while their father shifted uncomfortably in his leather chair. Only Catherine maintained her composure, though. Marcus caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about," Jonathan said, but his voice cracked on the words. Marcus pulled out Lily's birth certificate and slammed it on the mahogany desk. Lily Elena Campbell, born July 15th, 2016. Father, Marcus Whitfield. "My signature is on this document, Jonathan. A document I don't remember signing because you had my memories erased." Richard stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger. "That woman was a nobody. A nurse who got her claws into you when you were vulnerable. She would have destroyed everything we built." "So you destroyed her instead," Marcus shot back. "You had me committed, drugged, and tortured until I forgot the only woman I ever loved. We saved you." Catherine's mask finally slipped, revealing the steel beneath. "You were ready to throw away your inheritance, your position, everything for some common girl and her bastard child." The words hit Marcus like physical blows, but he pressed on. "Where is Elena now?" Jonathan looked at their parents, then back at Marcus. Under the weight of his brother's furious stare, his resolve crumbled. "Pine Valley Psychiatric Institute," he whispered, 300 miles north. "She's been there for 7 months under the name Elena Rodriguez." Marcus felt rage so pure it was almost blinding. "You had her committed too. She became unstable after you." "After the treatment," Jonathan continued, his voice barely audible. "She kept trying to contact you, showing up at the office, calling constantly. We had to stop her before she ruined everything. She was grieving," Marcus roared. "She lost the man she loved because his family are monsters." Catherine stood, her chin raised defiantly. "We did what was necessary to protect this family's legacy. That woman and her child would have been our destruction." Marcus looked at the 3 people who shared his blood, people who had raised him, claimed to love him, yet had committed the ultimate betrayal. They had stolen not just his memories, but his chance at happiness, his relationship with his daughter, and years of Elena's life. "You're right about one thing," he said quietly. "This family is about to be destroyed, but not by Elena or Lily, by me." He turned and walked toward the door, their voices calling after him, but he didn't look back. The Whitfield family had just declared war on the wrong man. Marcus had 8 years of stolen time to make up for, and he would tear down everything they'd built to do it. Marcus didn't sleep that night. By dawn, he was liquidating everything he owned. The Lamborghini went first, then the Rolex collection his father had given him for his 30th birthday. His penthouse went on the market, along with his art collection and every luxury that had once defined his identity. Within 48 hours, he had raised $3 million in cash. Every penny would go toward finding Elena and ensuring Lily received the best medical care money could buy. The drive to Pine Valley Psychiatric Institute took 4 hours through winding mountain roads. Marcus's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. After 9 years, he was finally going to see Elena again, a woman whose memory had been stolen from him, whose love had been erased like it never existed. Pine Valley looked more like a prison than a hospital. High walls topped with razor wires surrounded imposing gray buildings. Marcus's heart sank as he approached the main entrance. This was where Elena had been trapped for 7 months, believing herself abandoned and forgotten. "I'm here to see Elena Rodriguez," Marcus told the receptionist, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman, a tired-looking blonde in her 50s, didn't look up from her computer. "Visiting hours are Sundays only. You'll need to schedule an appointment." "I'm her emergency contact," Marcus lied smoothly. "There's been a family crisis." This got her attention. She studied his expensive suit and confident demeanor, then checked her records. "I'll need to see identification and speak with Dr. Harrison." 20 minutes later, Marcus sat across from Dr. Michael Harrison, a thin man with nervous eyes who kept fidgeting with his pen. The office reeked of cigarettes and desperation. "Ms. Rodriguez has been with us for 7 months," Dr. Harrison explained, avoiding direct eye contact. "Severe depression with psychotic episodes. She suffers from elaborate delusions about a wealthy businessman who she claims abandoned her and their child." Marcus felt sick. They had convinced Elena that her memories were delusions, that their love had never been real. "I'd like to see her," Marcus said carefully. "I'm afraid that's impossible. She becomes agitated around male visitors. The delusions intensify." Dr. Harrison's hand shook slightly as he reached for his coffee cup. "Her treatment requires complete isolation from triggers." "What kind of treatment?" "Antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, electroconvulsive therapy when necessary. She's made remarkable progress forgetting these harmful fantasies." Marcus wanted to reach across the desk and strangle the man. Instead, he pulled out his checkbook. "Doctor, I'm prepared to make a substantial donation to this facility. Perhaps we could discuss transferring Ms. Rodriguez to a private room where I could visit as part of her therapeutic process." Dr. Harrison's eyes widened as Marcus wrote out a check for $50,000. "Well," the doctor said, suddenly much more cooperative, "I suppose we could make special arrangements. But I should warn you, she may not recognize you. The medications have affected her short-term memory significantly." An hour later, Marcus stood outside Elena's room, his heart hammering against his ribs. Through the small window, he could see her sitting by the window, staring out at nothing. She was thinner than he remembered from his fragmented dreams, her beautiful chestnut hair now dull and unkempt. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly. Side effects from the heavy medication. When he entered the room, Elena looked up with confusion rather than recognition. The spark that had once lit up her entire face was gone, replaced by the vacant stare of someone who had been broken by too much medication and forced isolation. "Elena," Marcus whispered, his voice catching in his throat. She tilted her head, studying his face with the curiosity of someone trying to place a half-remembered dream. "Do I know you?" she asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. "You look familiar, but Dr. Harrison says my mind creates people who aren't real." Marcus felt his heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. They had convinced the woman he loved that her own memories were lies. For the next 3 weeks, Marcus visited Elena every day. He brought fresh flowers, played her favorite classical music, and told her stories about a life she couldn't remember. Slowly, carefully, He began to break down the walls of medication and manipulation that had imprisoned her mind. On Tuesday, while sitting by her bedside reading poetry, Elena suddenly grabbed his wrist. "That voice," she whispered, her eyes focusing. "For the first time since he'd arrived, I know that voice. You used to read to me, didn't you? In the mornings with coffee and—" She struggled, pressing her palms against her temples. "Why can't I remember?" "The medication is blocking your memories," Marcus said gently. "But I'm going to help you remember everything, Elena. I promise." Meanwhile, Marcus made daily trips back to the city to visit Lily, who was growing weaker with each chemotherapy session. During one visit, as he helped her work on a jigsaw puzzle of butterflies, she looked up at him with those familiar blue eyes. "Daddy, do you remember when Mama used to sing me to sleep?" Lily asked, her voice small and tired. She always sang the same song about a princess who was waiting for her prince to come home from a long journey. The words hit Marcus like lightning. Suddenly, a complete memory crashed over him with stunning clarity. He was lying in a small apartment bedroom, morning sunlight streaming through sheer curtains. Elena was humming softly as she got dressed for her nursing shift. She caught him watching her and smiled. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You," he replied, pulling her close. "Us, this." He gestured around the modest room that felt more like home than any mansion he'd ever lived in. "Marcus," Elena said, her voice suddenly serious. "I have something to tell you." The memory continued with devastating clarity. Elena taking his hands, placing them on her still flat stomach, her eyes shining with tears of joy and fear. "We're going to have a baby." Marcus remembered the explosion of emotion that had followed. Pure, overwhelming happiness mixed with fierce protectiveness. He remembered dropping to his knees, kissing her belly, making promises he'd thought he could keep forever. "I'm going to leave the company," he'd told her that same morning. "We'll open that free clinic you've always dreamed about. I don't need my family's money if I have you and our baby." "Elena Rodriguez," he'd said, trying out the ring he'd bought weeks earlier, but hadn't had the courage to present yet. "Will you marry me?" Her yes had been so enthusiastic, it knocked them both onto the bed in a tangle of laughter and tears. Back in Lily's hospital room, Marcus was crying openly for the first time in decades. "Daddy, are you okay?" Lily asked, reaching up to touch his face with her small hand. "I remember her song," Marcus whispered. "I remember everything, sweetheart. I remember how much your mama and I loved each other, and how excited we were when we found out about you." "Really? You remember Mama?" "I remember proposing to her on a rainy Thursday morning in our kitchen. I remember feeling your first kick when she was 6 months pregnant. I remember choosing your name together and buying your first teddy bear." Marcus took Lily's hand gently. "And I remember the last day before they took me away, how I promised your mama I'd come back for both of you." Lily's eyes filled with wonder. "You really are my daddy." "I really am baby girl, and I'm never leaving you or Mama again." But even as Marcus made that promise, he knew time was running out. Elena was trapped in a drug-induced haze, and Lily was fighting a battle her small body might not win. He had to bring them together soon, before it was too late. Marcus couldn't wait any longer. Samuel's investigation had uncovered the financial trail. The Pine Valley Psychiatric Institute was receiving monthly payments of $50,000 from an offshore account controlled by the Whitfield Family Trust. Dr. Harrison was being paid handsomely to keep Elena sedated and isolated. Armed with this evidence and a team of the best medical malpractice lawyers in the country, Marcus stormed back to Pine Valley. This time, he wasn't asking permission. "Dr. Harrison," Marcus said, placing the bank records on the man's desk. "These payments stop today." Elena Rodriguez is being transferred to Cedar Springs Recovery Center immediately. The doctor's face went white as he scanned the documents. I don't know what you think this proves. It proves you've been paid to keep an innocent woman drugged and imprisoned. Marcus's lawyer, Rebecca Stone, interrupted. We have court orders for her immediate release and medical records showing systematic overmedication. Within hours, Elena was being carefully transported to Cedar Springs, a private facility specializing in medical detoxification. Marcus rode in the ambulance, holding her hand as she drifted in and out of consciousness. Marcus? She whispered during a moment of clarity. Are you real? Or am I dreaming again? I'm real, Elena. I'm here, and I'm not leaving you. The detoxification process was brutal. For 3 weeks, Marcus watched Elena fight through withdrawals from medications that had been keeping her docile and confused. He slept in a chair beside her bed, holding her hand through the worst of it. On the 22nd day, Elena opened her eyes and truly saw him for the first time in 7 months. Marcus, she breathed, and in that single word was 9 years of love, loss, and desperate hope. Hello, beautiful, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. Elena reached up to touch his cheek, as if confirming he was real. They told me. You were a delusion. They said I made you up. No, sweetheart. I'm real. We're real. Everything you remember about us is true. Elena began to cry then, deep, wrenching sobs for all the lost time, all the pain they'd endured. Marcus climbed into the narrow hospital bed and held her while she grieved. Lily, she said suddenly, pulling back to look at him. How is our baby? Marcus's face told her everything before he spoke. She's sick, Elena. Leukemia. She's been fighting it for months while they had you locked away. Take me to her, Elena said, trying to sit up despite her weakness. Please, Marcus, I need to see our daughter. Are you sure you're strong enough? Elena's eyes blazed with a fire Marcus remembered from their early days together. I've been separated from my child for 7 months. I'm strong enough for anything. Now, the drive to Children's Memorial Hospital was silent, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Elena clutched Marcus's hand, afraid that if she let go, this reunion might prove to be another cruel dream. When they reached Lily's room, Elena stopped at the doorway, her breath catching. Their little girl looked so small in the hospital bed, pale and thin from chemotherapy, but still beautiful with her cascade of red curls. Mama? Lily's voice was barely a whisper, but her face lit up like Christmas morning. Mama, you came back. Elena ran to the bed, gathering Lily in her arms for the reunion they'd all been waiting for. The reunion between Elena and Lily was everything Marcus had dreamed of, and heartbreaking at the same time. Elena held her daughter carefully, as if she might disappear again, while Lily cried tears of pure relief. I thought you left because I was bad, Lily whispered against her mother's shoulder. I thought the cancer made you go away. Oh, my baby, Elena sobbed, stroking Lily's thin red curls. I never wanted to leave you. Bad people took me away, but I thought about you every single second. I dreamed about holding you again. Marcus watched from the doorway, his heart simultaneously breaking and healing. This was his family, the family that had been stolen from him, the love that had been erased from his memory. Over the next 2 weeks, they lived practically in Lily's hospital room. Marcus learned to braid his daughter's hair the way Elena taught him, his large fingers surprisingly gentle with the delicate strands. Elena sang the Spanish lullabies her own mother had sung to her, filling the sterile room with warmth and love. Tell me about when I was a baby, Lily would ask during her treatments, and Elena would describe how Marcus used to talk to her belly every night, how he'd felt every kick and hiccup. Your daddy was so excited to meet you, Elena said, glancing at Marcus with eyes full of remembered love. He had your whole nursery painted and ready 2 months before you were born. Marcus felt the weight of all those stolen years. First steps he'd missed, bedtime stories he'd never read, scraped knees he hadn't kissed better. But watching Elena with Lily now, seeing the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter, he realized something profound. Love hadn't been destroyed by the separation. It had only grown stronger. "Daddy," Lily said one evening as Marcus read her a story about brave princesses, "are you and Mama going to get married like you planned?" Marcus looked at Elena, who was dozing in the chair beside the bed. Even exhausted, and still recovering from her ordeal, she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. "Would you like that, sweetheart?" "More than anything," Lily said. "I want us to be a real family before." She didn't finish the sentence, but they all knew what she meant. The doctors had been clear. The leukemia was aggressive, and time was running short. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Marcus and Elena walked to the hospital chapel. It was small and quiet, lit only by candles and the soft glow of stained glass windows. "Elena," Marcus said, taking her hands in his, "I know we've lost so much time, and I know you've been through hell because of my family. But I love you now exactly the same way I loved you 9 years ago. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend whatever time we have left making up for the years they stole from us?" Elena looked into his eyes, those steel-gray eyes that had haunted her dreams during the darkest months, and saw the man she'd never stopped loving. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Marcus. Let's be the family we were always meant to be." They were married 3 days later in Lily's hospital room, with their daughter as the maid of honor and Mrs. Carmen Rodriguez as their witness. Lily wore a flower, crown Elena had made from the garden outside, and despite the 4 lines and medical equipment, she had never looked more radiant. As Marcus kissed his bride for the first time in 9 years, Lily clapped her hands weakly and whispered, "Now we're really a family." But even in their joy, they all knew this was just the beginning of the hardest fight of their lives. Their happiness was short-lived. Just 2 weeks after their hospital wedding, Marcus received a call that made his blood run cold. His family's lawyers were challenging his mental competency and demanding custody of Lily, claiming Elena was an unfit mother due to her psychiatric history. "They can't do this," Elena said, her voice shaking as she read the legal documents. "They've already destroyed our lives once. They won't succeed this time," Marcus replied grimly. "I have the best lawyers money can buy, and more importantly, I have the truth." The custody battle became a media circus overnight. The Whitfield family's connections ensured that stories appeared in every major newspaper. Billionaire abandons dying child, and mental patient claims tycoon's fortune. Photographers camped outside the hospital, trying to get pictures of Lily in her weakened state. Marcus sold everything he had left, his remaining stock options, his grandfather's watch, even his mother's jewelry that had been left to him. Every dollar went to legal fees and Lily's medical care. "You're giving up everything for us," Elena said one night as they watched Lily sleep. "Your family, your fortune, your entire life." "No," Marcus replied, taking her hand. "I'm finally getting my life back. Everything else was just things, Elena. You and Lily, you're my everything." The legal battle raged for 4 months. Marcus's former employees testified about the family's controlling behavior. Carmen Rodriguez flew in from Oak Valley to tell the court about Elena's devotion to her daughter. Even Dr. Harrison, granted immunity, confessed to the illegal payments in Elena's forced medication, but the most powerful testimony came from Lily herself. Despite being weak from her latest round of chemotherapy, she insisted on speaking to the judge. In a voice barely above a whisper, she told the court about the father who read her stories every night, who learned to braid her hair, who never left her side during the scary medical procedures. "My daddy didn't know about me," because the bad people made him forget, she said, looking directly at Catherine Whitfield in the gallery. But he came back like Mama always said he would. He loves me, and I love him. The judge's decision was swift and decisive. Marcus retained full custody. Elena was declared a fit mother, and the Whitfield family was ordered to pay damages for their conspiracy. Richard and Catherine were sentenced to 15 years for kidnapping and conspiracy. Jonathan lost control of the company entirely. But victory came at a terrible cost. During the months of legal stress, Lily's condition had deteriorated rapidly. The oncologist delivered the news Marcus had been dreading. The leukemia had spread to her brain and spinal cord. She had perhaps 6 to 8 weeks left. "We brought the best doctors from around the world," Marcus told Elena as they sat in yet another consultation room. Johns Hopkins, St. Jude, Memorial Sloan Kettering. They all say the same thing. Elena closed her eyes, absorbing the devastating news. When she opened them, they were filled with fierce determination. "Then we make these 6 weeks the most beautiful of her life," she said. "We give her everything we couldn't give her before." That afternoon, Marcus used his last $50,000 to rent a small cottage by the ocean in Monterey Bay. If their daughter was going to leave them, she would do so surrounded by love, laughter, and the sound of waves. For the first time in 9 years, they were going to live as the family they'd always been meant to be. The Whitfield family wasn't finished. Even as Marcus packed their belongings for Monterey Bay, Jonathan launched one final desperate attack. Using the last of their connections and remaining wealth, they filed an emergency injunction claiming Marcus was kidnapping Lily and denying her proper medical care. "They want to force her back into the hospital," Marcus's lawyer Rebecca explained over the phone. "They're arguing that removing her from intensive care is tantamount to murder." Marcus looked at Lily, who was sitting in her wheelchair by the window, watching seagulls dance over the waves. For the first time in months, she was smiling, a real genuine smile that lit up her pale face. "Over my dead body," he said quietly. The legal battle exploded across national media. The Whitfield family painted Marcus as a desperate man who was letting his daughter die rather than admit he couldn't save her. They hired medical experts who testified that experimental treatments in Germany or Switzerland might give Lily a chance. "They're offering false hope," Dr. Sarah Chun, Lily's oncologist, testified via video conference. "The child has weeks, not months. The most compassionate thing is to let her spend that time with her family, not in a sterile hospital room, fighting treatments that will only cause more suffering." Elena broke down during her testimony, describing the 7 months of forced separation, and how Lily had asked every day when Mama would come home. "They've already stolen so much from us," she sobbed. "Please don't let them steal these last precious weeks." But the most devastating moment came when the opposing lawyers demanded to interview Lily directly. Against all medical advice, they insisted on bringing her into the courtroom for questioning. Marcus carried his daughter into the courthouse, her frail body weighing almost nothing in his arms. She wore a yellow dress that Elena had sewn by hand and a knitted cap to cover her hair loss from chemotherapy. "Lily," the Whitfield family, lawyer began, "don't you want to get better? Don't you want to try treatments that might save your life?" Lily looked at the man with those brilliant blue eyes that had captivated Marcus from their first meeting. "I'm not afraid of dying," she said in a voice that was weak but absolutely clear. "I used to be scared because I thought I was all alone. But now I have my daddy and my mama, and we're a real family. I just want to spend my time with them by the ocean, like normal families do." The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of people crying. "Do you understand that your father is choosing to let you die rather than fight for your life?" the lawyer pressed. "My daddy is choosing to let me live," Lily replied with a wisdom far beyond her 8 years. "There's a difference." The judge ruled in their favor that same day, but the victory felt hollow. The stress of the legal battle had accelerated Lily's decline. What should have been 6 weeks was now measured in days. That evening, as they finally drove toward their cottage by the sea, Lily fell asleep in Elena's arms for what they all knew might be the last time. "We did it," Marcus said quietly. "We're finally free." But freedom had come at the highest possible price, and time was running out faster than any of them had imagined. The Supreme Court's final ruling was decisive and damning. The Whitfield family conspiracy was exposed in excruciating detail across every major news network. Richard and Catherine Whitfield were sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for kidnapping, conspiracy, and medical fraud. Jonathan faced additional charges for perjury and witness tampering. Whitfield Industries collapsed overnight. Decades of built reputation crumbled as investors fled and partners severed ties. The company that had been Marcus's birthright was liquidated, its assets sold to pay legal penalties and victim compensation. Marcus watched the news coverage from their cottage window, feeling nothing but emptiness where satisfaction should have been. Justice had finally been served, but it felt meaningless now. The irony is devastating. He told Elena as they sat watching Lily sleep peacefully in the portable hospital bed they'd set up by the window. "I finally destroyed them completely. But what's the point? I'd trade everything, the victory, the vindication, all of it, for just one more year with her." Elena took his hand, her own trembling with exhaustion. The past 4 months of legal warfare had taken their toll on all of them, but especially on Lily. The constant stress, the courtroom appearances, the media attention, it had accelerated her decline dramatically. "The doctor said 6 to 8 weeks when we won custody," Elena whispered. "That was 4 months ago." Marcus nodded grimly. Dr. Chun's latest prognosis had been brutal in its honesty. Lily had days, not weeks. The leukemia had spread throughout her nervous system, and her small body was simply too weak to fight anymore. "At least she knows the truth now," Kalina continued, stroking their daughter's thin hand. "She knows we love her, that we fought for her, that we never abandoned her by choice." Over the past weeks at the cottage, they had tried to create a lifetime of memories in precious few days. Marcus had learned to make pancakes in the shape of butterflies, burning dozens before finally getting them right. Elena taught Lily traditional Spanish dances, even though she could barely stand. They watched every sunset from the porch, Lily bundled between them in soft blankets. "Mama, Daddy," Lily had said just yesterday, her voice barely audible above the sound of the waves. "Promise me something." "Anything, sweetheart," Marcus replied. "Promise you'll get married again on the beach where I can watch from heaven. And promise you'll have babies so I can have little brothers and sisters to take care of up there." The request had broken both their hearts, but they had promised. Now, as dawn broke over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that Lily loved so much, Marcus realized that their victory over his family meant nothing. The Whitfields were destroyed, their conspiracy exposed, their power broken, but Lily was still dying. All the money in the world, all the legal victories, all the justice couldn't buy them what they needed most, more time. "She's waking up," Elena said softly. Lily's eyes fluttered open, and despite her weakness, she smiled at the sight of her parents beside her. "Good morning, my beautiful girl," Marcus whispered, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Is it time for pancakes?" Lily asked, though they all knew she had no appetite left. "If that's what you want, sweetheart." As Marcus headed to the kitchen to make what might be their last breakfast together, he understood the true meaning of their bitter victory. They had won the war, but were about to lose everything that mattered. Cottage by Monterey Bay became their sanctuary of love and laughter in the face of heartbreak. For 6 precious weeks, Marcus, Elena, and Lily lived as the family they'd always been meant to be, creating memories that would have to last a lifetime. Marcus discovered he was terrible at making pancakes but excellent at inventing bedtime stories. Every night, he told Lily tales of brave princesses with fiery red hair who went on magical adventures and always found their way home to the people who loved them most. "Tell me the one about Princess Lily and the Ocean Kingdom," she would whisper from her bed by the window, where she could see the waves dancing in the moonlight. Elena taught their daughter Spanish lullabies that her own grandmother had sung, filling the small cottage with melodies of love and heritage. Even when Lily became too weak to sing along, she would hum softly, her eyes bright with joy. "Mi niña hermosa," Elena would whisper, "you are the most beautiful song my heart has ever known." They had picnics on the beach with Lily wrapped in soft quilts, her portable oxygen tank disguised with ribbons and flowers. Marcus learned to braid her thinning hair with infinite gentleness, creating elaborate crowns that made her feel like the princess in his stories. "Daddy," Lily said one afternoon as they watched dolphins play in the distance, "I'm not scared anymore." "What changed, sweetheart?" "I used to think dying meant being alone forever, but now I know that love doesn't die. Even when I go to heaven, I'll still be your little girl, and you'll still be my daddy." Marcus's throat tightened with unshed tears. "That's right, baby. Nothing can ever change that." As September arrived, Lily grew weaker but somehow more radiant. Her spirit seemed to grow brighter even as her body faded, as if she was already becoming something more than earthly. "I have a secret," she told them on what would be her last coherent day. "Sometimes at night, I see a beautiful lady with red hair like mine. She says she's been waiting to meet me, and that she's going to show me how to watch over you and Mama from the clouds." Marcus felt his heart stop. "What does she look like, sweetheart?" "Like me, but grown up, and she has the kindest eyes. She says her name is Sophia, and that she's been lonely without her family, but now she won't be anymore, because I'm coming to keep her company." Elena and Marcus exchanged glances through their tears. Sophia, Marcus's little sister, who had disappeared 33 years ago, on a Tuesday morning painted in shades of gold and pink, Lily took her last breath surrounded by endless love. She fell asleep between her parents in the big bed they'd moved to the living room so she could see the ocean, her small hand clasped in Marcus's, her head resting on Elena's shoulder. Her final words, whispered so softly they almost missed them, were, "Thank you for coming back to me, Daddy and Mama. Now I can go happy." The funeral was held on the same beach where they'd spent their last weeks together. Hundreds of people came, patients and families Elena had helped during her years as a pediatric nurse, former Whitfield Industries employees who had witnessed Marcus's transformation, Mrs. Carmen Rodriguez, with neighbors from Oak Valley, who had watched Lily grow up. But the most touching moment came when a group of children from the hospital's cancer ward released white balloons into the sky, each one carrying a message of love for the brave little girl who had taught them all that dying wasn't the end of love. It was just love taking a different form. 18 months after Lily's death, Marcus stood on the same beach where his daughter had taken her last breath, wearing a simple navy suit instead of the expensive designer clothes that had once defined him. Beside him, Elena wore a flowing white dress, her hair adorned with yellow flowers, Lily's favorites. "She would have loved this," Elena whispered, her hand resting on her rounded belly where their twins grew strong and healthy. "She does love this," Marcus replied, looking up at the sky where white clouds danced in formations that reminded him of angel wings. "I can feel her here with us." Their wedding ceremony was simple and intimate. Mrs. Carmen Rodriguez served as Elena's matron of honor, tears of joy streaming down her weathered cheeks. Samuel Cross, who had become like a brother to Marcus, stood as his best man. The hospital staff who had cared for Lily filled the small gathering, along with families that Elena had helped during her years as a pediatric nurse. As they exchanged vows, a gentle breeze carried the scent of ocean salt and wildflowers, and Marcus could swear he heard the faint sound of a little girl's laughter dancing on the wind. "I promise to love you with the same fierce devotion Lily taught me," Marcus said, his voice strong despite his tears. "And I promise that every day we have together will honor the memory of our brave little girl." After the ceremony, they walked hand in hand to the memorial garden Marcus had created on the cliff overlooking the ocean. A simple stone bench bore the inscription, "Lily Elena Campbell Whitfield, our guardian angel who taught us that love never dies." "Hello, sweetheart," Elena said softly, placing a bouquet of yellow roses on the memorial. "Mama and Daddy got married today, just like we promised. And your little brother and sister are growing bigger every day." Marcus knelt beside the stone, pulling out a small piece of paper. "I wrote you a letter, Lily, just like the bedtime stories, but this one's true." He read aloud, "My dearest daughter, today I married your mama again, and I know you were there dancing in the clouds above us. I work at the children's hospital now, helping other daddies and mamas who are scared and don't know how to be brave. You taught me that love is stronger than fear, stronger than death, stronger than anything the world can throw at us. I see you in every sunset, hear you in every child's laughter, and feel you in every moment of joy your mama and I share. Thank you for waiting for me to come home. Thank you for loving me, even when I couldn't remember how to love myself. Until we meet again, my beautiful girl." As the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and gold, Elena felt the babies kick strongly within her. "She's telling them stories about their big sister," Elena said, smiling through her tears. Marcus wrapped his arms around his wife, his hand resting gently on their growing children. He had lost everything his old life had valued, money, power, prestige, but in return, he had found something infinitely more precious, a love that transcended time, space, and even death itself. 47. Marcus Whitfield was no longer a billionaire CEO. He was something much richer, a father, a husband, and a man who had learned that the greatest fortune of all was the love of a little girl who had called him Daddy and meant it with her whole heart. In his small office at Children's Memorial Hospital, where he now counseled other families facing the unthinkable, only one photo sat on his desk, Lily smiling radiantly between him and Elena on the beach, her blue eyes sparkling with joy, her red hair catching the golden sunlight like fire. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, was a small drawing in crayon, a family of 4 where one member had beautiful angel wings, watching over 2 tiny babies with infinite love. Some stories end with happily ever after. This one ended with something even more powerful, eternal love that death itself could not diminish.